Good afternoon. I'm Jay Fidel, and every Wednesday at this time we do Hawaii, the state of clean energy.
Energy Wednesday.
And I get to see Sharon Moriwaki, my co-host. Hi, Sharon.
Hi, Jay.
And today our special guest is Matthias Fripp, Assistant Professor of Electrical Engineering at the College of Engineering at UH Manoa. Am I right about that?
Yeah, that's right.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
And we also have Hoang Tran from Hawaii Energy. And this is an important appearance for Juan. He normally supervises the appearances of our Negawatt moment.
Yes.
But today he's actually going to conduct the appearance by his own self. And he's going to give us some very important tips for Christmas. So take it away, Juan.
Yeah, thank you. I'm usually in the shadows, so they put me in the spotlight today. So I'm here to talk about how to save energy during the holidays. I know it's a big time for energy use. You know, you have family over, cooking, using the lights, Christmas lights, trees, and everything. So I have a few tips to kind of help you with your bill this season. So one of the tips is to keep your oven door closed. A lot of people, when they cook, they like to open, close the oven, but people don't know that when they open it, the temperature decreases by about 25 degrees, and it uses energy to kind of get it back up.
Much,
so
huh?
you're actually causing more energy use by doing that. Install a timer for your lights. You don't have to have the lights on all day. You know, if when the sun goes down, turn on the lights. When you go to sleep, the lights go off. So limit your tree lights, meaning that you don't have to put a full set of tree lights. You can substitute it with ornaments that are brighter and a little bit more sparkly, so you can have a more illuminated tree. And then our last tip is save energy while doing laundry. So if you're spilling cranberry juice on your shirt, you want to do laundry, wash it in cold water and hang it to dry so you don't have to use a dryer or hot water.
Or you could not spill cranberry juice
Correct.
on yourself.
Correct, yes.
So should do this for clean energy.
Yes,
Are there LED Christmas tree lights that we can get?
I believe so.
Do we get some kind of
Some free samples?
incentive? Yeah, free
Yeah.
samples or incentives?
Well, we
or-
do incentivize for certain lights, but we have a list of all the lights that we incentivize on hawaiienergy.com, so you can check out that
Christmas
site.
lights too. Christmas lights? Or
I'm not
just-
really sure, but I know regular lights in the household that we do incentivize.
So, question one, is Christmas, New Year's, and retrospectively Thanksgiving, are they heavy energy use days in the residential sector?
I would believe so, considering you're doing the hours of cooking. Usually when you cook, you cook for about 45 minutes, half an hour.
Yeah.
But, you know, with the holidays, Christmas and the family over, you know, cooking a turkey, a ham can take 3, 4, 5 hours.
Yeah.
And then, you know, family's over, probably not in Hawaii, but in the mainland, you know, the more people in the household, the more heat you're using, you know, because it's probably cold outside. So yeah, I would say that during the holidays, more energy is used, so.
I just wonder, I mean, maybe we don't know the answer. Maybe Matthias knows the answer, but if I put everybody in the city at home one day, and I closed all the businesses, all the operations, all the offices, just, you know, quiet everything down, and have everybody just stay at home with their family, would that be more use than on a business day when everybody was not home, but rather they were at their business?
I mean, you're still using energy, so
Yeah.
I'm not really sure what the difference would be. But I would think that if the businesses are not in business and their lights are off and
Air
everything's
conditioners are
unplugged
off.
and air conditioners
If you
are
kept
down.
the lights off when you're home too.
Yeah, the air conditioners.
That'd be terrific. So I guess from a point of view of energy efficiency, we should all stay home. That would be helping.
With the lights
energy
off.
efficiency.
In one
The
room.
lights off.
Forget about going to work.
Yes,
Matthias, am
exactly.
I right about this?
Yeah, or go camping. I mean, the big thing would be if you turn off the air conditioning in all those big
air
buildings.
conditioning.
Yeah.
If everyone leaves the building and the air conditioning's still running, it's not going to make.
Yeah.
Turning off the lights will help, but
Yeah.
it won't make a big difference.
Well, the buildings love to turn off the air conditioning. Saves them money. Saves the tenants money too. Do you have any cross-examination you want to ask Matthias?
Oh, no, I thought those were good tips. I think the LED lights do save a lot, and they're pretty cheap now, and you don't have to worry about one light goes out and the whole string, you know, pulling them out one at a time to try to fix the missing bulb or
And
the
they
broken
come in
bulb.
different colors too, so I guess you can have that on the trees.
Yeah, and you can string them together. They use so little power that you can make really long strings of them without having to have lots of extension cords. So that they might be a little safer for that reason too.
Of course, you could have a string of bulbs wired in serial. And just for fun, you could put one bulb in there that's calculated to last only half an hour and let it go out. And then all the bulbs go out. And you save tons of energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just trying to be helpful here.
I'm not sure. I guess you could go to your neighbor's house and save their energy for them.
Where can I buy this? Never mind. Okay, closing words, one?
Yeah, so if you want to know more about, we have more tips on our website at hawaiienergy.com. So I just gave you a little teaser on 4 tips. Well, we have a list of
Oh,
tips
there's
on
more?
our site. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you
Thank
for those
you.
tips. And may I be the first one, well, maybe you've heard this before, but to wish you happy Christmas.
Well, happy holidays to you
Happy
guys.
holidays.
Happy
to you,
holidays.
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Okay, a short break at this point to let Juan get back to his office so he can, what do you do back there?
String the lights.
Paint rocks.
And we're going to replace him at the table with Ray Starling, also of Hawaii Energy. We'll be right back. You'll see, I mean it.
Aloha, I'm Kirsten Baumgart-Turner, and I host Sustainable Hawaii every Tuesday from 11 a.m. to 12 noon. My guests offer insights on challenging economic and environmental issues facing our state and offer innovative solutions to increasing Hawaii's long-term sustainability. Recently, we've been focusing on sustainable land development, food, and energy security. If you have a project or issue you'd like to discuss on the show or would like to be a guest, please contact me at kirstenbturner@gmail.com and tune in live weekly or view the show at your convenience at thinktechhawaii.com. Mahalo.
Hi, my name is Stan Osserman, and I host the show every Friday here on ThinkTech Hawaii called Stan the Energy Man. We talk about everything energy, from anaerobic digesters to batteries to hydrogen fuel cell and grid power. And we do that to keep you informed on the latest technology that's out there and the things that are going on in Hawaii. We broadcast every Friday from noon until 1 o'clock, and I hope you'll tune in. So sometimes we'll be on ThinkTech, and sometimes we'll be on Olelo Channel 54, and I'd like you to listen in to me and join me every Friday. We'll see you then. Aloha.
Okay, we're back, we're live, we're early on Christmas, and I suppose the question is, how can you tell the hosts in a ThinkTech Energy show? That's a
Ho, ho, ho.
see if you can answer that one. Okay, and that's Ray, he just joined us, Ray Starling, welcome to the show. And Sharon, of course, Sharon Moriwaki, another co-host, and me, Jay Fidel, and our special guest is Matthias Fripp, Assistant Professor of Electrical Engineering at the College of Engineering at Holmes Hall in the center of the universe, Manoa.
Sure feels like it, yeah.
So what do you do up there?
I do research and teach students. I spend most of the year teaching students, sitting on committees, answering whatever people email me about, and then every few years they take a look and see if I've done enough research and whether I get to stay or not.
Tell us the work that you're doing, the research that you're doing. What kinds of research? What are you looking at?
So I've been, well, actually for even years before I came here, I work on studying what it takes to get to very large shares of renewable energy. Or it started with trying to figure out how much we could use and if there was some natural limit. And then I found out pretty early on there's no technical limit really to how much renewable energy we can use. It's just a question of what choices we make in terms of what we're going to build and how we're going to fit it together and what that ends up costing us. So the work I do is really trying to find the least expensive combination of power plants and solar facilities and wind farms and batteries and hydrogen and so on in order to achieve renewable energy goals.
Whoa.
So it's 100% renewable energy. How does that connect up?
Yeah, so that's a great platform. Obviously we need to fix climate change, and renewable energy is going to be a big part of that. challenge. So I've been sort of always looking for how far can we push this. And Hawaii is the perfect place. We have very expensive fossil fuels, really good sun, good wind in some places. So it's an ideal place to really push the limits with renewable energy. So I was telling my students today, actually, I would have been working up to trying to put some pressure on policymakers to say we can do, we can go past 30% and 40, we can look at 60% renewable energy or 80 or whatever. And then they turn around and write a law saying 100%. So that part of the job is done, but it gives me work to do to figure out how we can get there.
They must have talked to their staff electrical engineering professor they have there at the legislature to figure out that exactly on January 1, I want to be around when this happens, 2045, we would make it. Now, in the week before, we would not have made it. There'd still be some Yonko riding around in a gas car, but by January 1, all the cars somehow were gone, or they were all electrical cars, and everybody had converted, to non-fossil fuel, and it's like a miracle. It's an apotheosis on that very day. It's extraordinary how they knew that. Or maybe they did something to make it happen.
Well, they didn't ask me about it.
They asked you, Ray? Sharon, how about you?
They didn't ask me.
No.
Yeah, so.
But they just knew.
They just knew. So had you been the staff electrical engineering professor at the legislature, I think they pay plenty, you know what I mean? What day would you have come up with? Would it have been January 1st, 2045, or possibly August 3rd, 2042?
Oh, man. You can sort of pick any day. It depends on what your goals are, really. I'm not sure how well they knew that going into it. I guess they must have had something to build their faith that this was possible. But it is possible, and it's really a question of how soon you want to do it. I think it actually costs about the same as the path we're on now, so it's really just a question of will in terms of how soon we do it. There's nothing that's going to be possible by 2045 that's not possible by 2030 or 2025. I mean, if you get too soon, you're going to have everyone, having to get hyperactive to get stuff built in time. But it's all modular existing stuff.
How soon can we get there, and what would the cost be?
I've done work lately looking at 2030. I think that could be a good target.
I'm on it.
Remember who said that
No, he
first?
said that.
I said
We all
that
agreed on
first.
that. So why don't you say something to the legislature, Ray?
Well, they didn't ask me, that's why. But
Okay,
if
we're-
they had asked me, I would have said.
You have at least 3 members of this table who are 2030 people.
Yeah.
Are you a 2030 person too?
Yeah, I'd say.
What, June 4th?
Yeah, give it till July 1st, maybe.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible. It's as possible by 2030 as it is by 2045. So.
I was telling you before the show began that I keep seeing this line, I think it's in PBN, where they say the PUC will rule on the next era merger, and I quote, by June 2016 or later. Well, does that mean before, at, or after? What does that mean? And it's kind of the same thing here. It's all pie in the sky about exactly when it happens. It's possible after, it's possible at 2030 or 2040, or it's possible earlier. All things are possible. But the question really is, did in its bill, its act to make 100% by 2045, did the legislature say how it intended to get there? Is there a mechanism?
I don't think there's much. I think it's a mandate on the electric utility, which is already a regulated entity. So I think if the legislature says you have to do this if you can, and there's some wiggle room there, because I think it says if it doesn't damage the economy or something. So that probably throws a fair amount of judgment over to the Public Utilities
It's in the
Commission.
public interest, yeah.
But as far as I know, there's not any sort of renewable credit trading system or certificates that they have to show or anything. It's up to them to do it, and it's probably up to the Utility Commission to make sure that they do it or to decide that it's too expensive to do. But I don't think I'm sure it doesn't spell out a plan for what they should build and when.
And nor does it actually allocate any money.
Right, well.
It's just aspirational.
Yeah, I mean, I assume that would come out of utility bills rather than some separate
Okay,
subsidy.
so it's a standard for the utility to follow.
Yeah, I
And
think so.
we'll see if we can do it, and maybe we can't, maybe we can. But suppose I made you, we all made you, the legislature, in 2016,
Mhm.
and you wanted to implement this thing.
Oh, right.
Yeah, what steps would you take? What's the next bill that should come out? So on the way to 2030, 2045, whatever it is.
I think a lot of it would be about giving everybody the incentives they need to help to sort of participate and advance this agenda. And particularly that means incentives to produce power at times when we need it, and allow anyone to produce power as long as it comes when we need it and they get paid what it's worth. And then you can use a very similar mechanism to encourage people to consume power at the times when we have it, and not at times when we don't. So, you know, our main resource here is solar power for meeting this kind of target. And that comes obviously just during the day, but we still use a lot of power at night, especially about this time of night, 5 or 6 at night and 7. So if you can give people an incentive, some kind of financial incentive or encouragement to use power during the day instead of at night, then that can help. You know, it saves you having to build battery banks and.
So it's time of use. It's all about time of use.
Yeah.
You know, the previous show with Chris Leatham on the economy and you, and he had an entrepreneurial organization that reserves parking stalls in shopping centers, and then they sell the parking stall to you using an app on your cell phone. And we were talking about, you know, how the best approach on this. So if all the parking stalls are free, obviously the price of a parking stall is low. It's all calculated by an algorithm. And if no parking stalls are left, the last one, the last one is really expensive, you know? So maybe you do that with time of use, right? It's automatic. And it says, okay, you want to use power during the peak hours? It's going to be much more expensive. And here's the algorithm. Here's what's going to happen to you. I mean, and I don't, you know,
That's what they can
people tend, they have that already.
Yeah.
And people tend to do it in steps with here's X and Y and Z. What about an algorithm that's completely dynamic? You subject yourself. You know that at 7 o'clock it's going to be high, and you're going to get zapped on your bill. And once everybody gets used to that, then you'll see patterns change. You know?
Yeah, I think that's broadly right. I don't know, I wouldn't necessarily use the parking lot analogy because that's controversial. I mean, that's private people sort of taking over the parking spots and
I'm just talking about
auctioning
dynamic
them off.
pricing.
But the general idea, you could think of it a bit like air travel as well. I mean, people don't love the fact that tickets cost more at Christmas time, but you always can get a flight at Christmas if you need it. And it's much cheaper to do it the way we have. And if you're able to fly at a different time of year, you can get a deal. And that arrangement is a lot cheaper than just saying it's going to be $200 any time of the year. Then you have to have all these extra planes on, and you're going to fly them empty half the time. And it's kind of the same with power. If we charge a flat price, then we end up building a lot of extra capacity because we're undercharging. We're charging people less than it costs to produce sometimes, so they consume more than they should. They end up paying for it, but at the time they don't think they're paying for
So
it.
what I hear you saying, correct me if there's more here, but it's photovoltaic is the biggest single asset that takes us down the road to 2030, hopefully. And B, it's time of use. And C, when we get computer literate enough, we just do it on a dynamic algorithm of some kind.
Yeah,
and
and
train everybody.
And I think there's a algorithm on the supply side which is actually already in place. Like HECO knows every hour exactly what it's costing them to produce power, and that's the price that they should be charging customers. That tends to frighten people, and maybe with good grounds. Everyone kind of intuitively thinks they're going to be the one stuck with the high power bill. They think is going to be my air conditioner that's running during the expensive hour.
I know that
It's
from
going to be
myself.
my
I know that from myself.
car that's charging.
I go through life like that.
And-
I'm the guy who never wins at contests, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's good evidence that we would all win on average, but nobody believes they'll be the winner. So
Yeah.
I think what can maybe help with that is technology in the home or the office that actually collects this price information and adapts on your behalf and basically guarantees that you'll be a winner. So you can have a water heater that says, okay, it's expensive at dinner time, so I'm going to wait until later at night or wait until morning to reheat water because I know no one's going to need it until morning. Or you can have an electric vehicle that charges. I mean, right now, if everyone bought electric cars, they would go home and plug them in at 6 o'clock right on top of the peak, and it would basically break the power system. But if they instead get a lower price at night or a lower price at their office in the morning, then their car can pick the cheapest time and charge them.
You know, Matthias, I'm a little stuck on something, though. The idea is changing infrastructure, isn't it? I mean, we aren't going to arrive at nirvana on June 4th, 2030, unless we have changed our infrastructure to take out the fossil fuel and to make everything run
Yeah.
on non-fossil fuel. These incentives, how do they get us to changing the infrastructure? There's a missing link there, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, it's right now it's up to HECO to do this, and that's why the mandate is on them. If the well, I've heard from them actually, they are not indirectly from them, that they feel like, okay, we think this is what people want, so we propose it, and then everyone says no, no. And then we think that's what they want, and we propose it, and everyone says no, no. And they really, you know, they just want a clear guidance on what to do and how they can make money doing it, and they'll do it. And it doesn't have to be, you know, the whole idea of electric utilities is they get a guaranteed rate of return, but not an exorbitant one. They get a few percent on whatever they do, and they'll do it. But it's up to the utility commission to ensure that they do what's in the public interest. So, you know, they need the Public Utility Commission saying, yes, if you build these solar farms, if you build these wind farms, if you install these batteries, if you install smart meters and set up this pricing system, you'll be able to collect your 4 or 5% back on that, and that's basically all you need.
Assuming that the utility stays in the same business model, you know, as a private corporation, licensed as a utility, subject to PUC line. Then the question becomes, the most important question, am I right, is incentivizing them to put in the infrastructure, to organize the funding, whatever they got to do, and the technology to put in new infrastructure that will convert everything. You know?
Yeah,
So how do we do that?
And that actually kind of baffles me that it's so hard, because the main way a utility profits is they build something that's in the public interest, you know, to serve their customers. They put up $1 billion, and then they get 5% a year on that as their guaranteed rate of return. And they've got this pool of customers that they can pull that sort of fair return from. So in principle, they like to build stuff. And you know, burning oil in power plants, that's just a pass-through. They don't make any profit on the oil they burn. So actually, there's a lot more money to be made for them to make building these capital-intensive projects, building wind farms, building solar arrays.
Just like you, they're engineers. They love to build stuff.
I wish they liked the challenges of managing it. I think that's part of it, is they see themselves as running big power plants that they turn up and down to follow the load, and that's kind of it. And they don't seem to be very excited about the challenges of balancing this dynamic system.
Last question, I'm going to take a break. Okay, last question on this very line. So I have to incentivize the utility to organize the increase in the infrastructure. This is really important. But at the same time, to do that, they have to make a return on their $1 billion of investment. They must make a return, or they're not incentivized at all.
Yeah.
At the same time, people are out there in the streets with pitchforks saying it's too expensive. They're not willing to pay that 5% return on the $1 billion. So how, all these structures considered, all the, you know, these constituents considered, how do we get everybody to cooperate and build the additional infrastructure to get to 2030? Maybe we should leave that question hanging, take a short break, come back, and look at it, okay?
Give
That's
us
Sounds
time
good.
to
Matthias
calculate.
Fripp.
Aloha. Welcome to Hawaii. My name is Josh Green. I'm a senator from the Big Island and a physician. I host a show weekly called Healthcare in Hawaii, where we talk about the most important issues in healthcare for our state, whether it's the dengue fever outbreak, the state of our public hospitals, how to find physicians and nurses for our patients, or really just the best things to do for our family's health. That's what you'll find on this show. I'll bring experts to your attention, and we'll have a free-flowing dialogue. Thanks for joining us.
Aloha! How you doing? It's me, Angus McTech, wishing you to welcome and join us to see us on Hibachi Talk on ThinkTech Hawaii. Join my co-hosts, Gordo the Tech Czar and Andrew the Security Guy, every Friday from 1300 to 1345. We look forward to seeing you. We'll talk tech and we'll have some wee bit of fun. And remember, let your wing gang free wherever you be. Aloha!
Hi, I'm Donna Blanchard. I'm the host of Center Stage here on ThinkTech Hawaii. Center Stage airs every Wednesday at 2 o'clock, and of course you can check out our archives on YouTube or on ThinkTech Hawaii anytime you like. Why should you do that? Because this is an arts show that I believe is making a difference in lives. We talk with artists of various ilk. We talk with painters and writers, playwrights, novelists, poets, sculptors, dancers, you name it, directors, actors, of course. And we don't only talk about what people do, but we talk about how they do it. And my favorite part of the conversation, we talk about why they do it. And it's really common on this show to hear people say, wow, I didn't think about it that way. And it's very common to hear people afterwards who have seen the show say the same thing. And I hear all the time that people are inspired by the conversations that we have. So why don't you join us and be inspired too? That's Center Stage on Wednesdays at 2 o'clock. We'll see you Center Stage.
Bingo, we're back. Okay, and we left a cliffhanger question with Matthias Fripp and all of you, okay? So if people don't want to pay more for infrastructure, and it's not just that there's this theoretical thing about paying, this is a real deal. We must have infrastructure if we're going to get to 2030, or for that matter, 2045. We can't do it without a lot of technology, expensive technology. Okay, and people don't want to pay anything extra, but in order to do it, somebody's got to pay. And the historical model is the utility advances the money and gets a return, an appropriate return, some return, not for nothing, some return, because it's a private company, and recovers it that way. This seems like an impossible inconsistency, a conflict of concepts. How do we do that?
Well, I think I would challenge the premise that it's going to cost more. And the work that I've done,
I'd like to know how
it
you
actually
do that
costs.
without,
I'd say in the work I've done, it comes out costing about the same to do the 100% renewable plans as it does to stick with oil or LNG potentially. So I would challenge that premise. I don't think it's going to rock people's power bills. I don't think they'd actually notice the difference in their power bill.
How do you buy the additional equipment? How do you buy that?
So that's up to the utility to put up the money, or they make contracts with other parties. There is a challenge there. And this is the other part of my answer is we need to make a good plan. We need to say, okay, this is how we're going to get to 100%. We need to make sure that everybody's happy with the plan, give everyone a chance to find a cheaper way to get there, and sort of demonstrate this is the cheapest and best way. It meets, it satisfies everyone's objectives. And then I think you can get buy-in, and especially given that it won't cost more than just sticking with oil, I think it's feasible. At that point, it's a question of how do you actually achieve it. I don't know that HECO hasn't shown a great record of being able to mobilize. It is in the billions of dollars that we're talking for these kind of projects. There's certainly a capital market out there that they can go to, and they may be able to come up with the money to do it themselves. They may be able to get independent power producers to do it and sign power purchase agreements with them at fair prices. They haven't tended to negotiate, to get very good offers from that process. I mean, the prices that come in for solar projects here are sort of double what they are on the mainland, and there's no reason for that. It's not clear why Hawaii would be a less competitive environment for this kind of stuff. But the general idea is no know how to get there, know what it's going to cost to get there, and then kind of, keep turning the screws until we get there. And it doesn't necessarily cost more, but it's going to take a lot of coordination and a lot of advanced planning.
Okay, Sharon, your witness.
Well, I think based on your studies, and you're doing some analysis of the different kinds of renewables, the different what you put on the grid, and what needs to be done to get to the 100% renewable to charge us all not more than what we have now. What are the renewables, and what is the costing of that? And when you say that there's no new costs, and that we could stay within the bounds of the current cost?
Well, the focus is really on, the resources. So far my work has been Oahu only modeling, just because I haven't had the time, and my grad students haven't had the time to integrate all the weather data for the other islands. But so for Oahu, we primarily have solar power available. There's a little bit of wind, but not very much. The places where we could do it have low wind. So it's solar and wind. It's at today's cost for these projects. It's actually without state or federal subsidies. So those actually probably would bring costs down significantly if they persist. State subsidies are part of state policy, so you can't really treat that as an external pool of money, but as long as the federal subsidies stay on, it actually gets cheaper. So it's solar at the same price as people are paying now to install it. It's wind at the prices that they're paying, that HECO says. And the reason it costs less is you stop burning oil. Oil is a tremendously valuable resource. It's the only thing right now that we can easily put into cars. And so in the last few years, we've seen the price of oil sort of peel off and come up relative to the other fossil fuels. And nobody else in the world, if they can avoid it, burns oil to produce electricity. It's just considered insane at this point. So we're burning oil, which costs several times more than other fossil fuels, and paying for it. And that money could be spent on renewable energy instead.
And you're not, like, what's music to Ray's ears, factoring in energy efficiency. It's just current usage based on taking out oil and putting in just more solar and wind. Is that how your analysis?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean,
We have
for
some
the sake,
slides up there. Is this relevant to your discussion?
Well, this gets more into the details of how it would work, but you can sort of start to see some of the challenges here. So what these are trying to show, the left side is a stack of different resources that are being used to produce power. So the big orange blob in the middle is solar power, and that shows for one particular day of the year how much we would have. This is based on a day in 2007, I think, but it's projected up to 2045. So we would want to build a lot of solar power, that's the yellow or the orange color, and then some wind, which is the darker blue underneath, and then that pretty much more than takes care of what we need during the day. And then we would need to add in, or we could potentially add in biofuels for the morning and evening. We could add in biofuels, which are the dark green at the bottom, and then use batteries just a little bit on the shoulder. You can see the dark red, and pumped hydroelectric storage, which is the light blue there. So that's the left graph. That's how we could produce power, and it really is predominantly solar. On the right graph, I'm showing what the consumption of power would look like, and the black dotted line there is the sort of load profile as we see it today for each hour of the day. And the first thing I'm starting with is what I said earlier. We need to try to reschedule electricity consumption into the middle of the day when we have these resources. So I reshape, or the model sort of says we could reshape the load so that it looks like that big gray chunk. So we reduce, I've assumed that we could reduce loads by about 30% at any time of day, and then reschedule that to the best time of day, and that gives the gray band. And then the dark green is assuming electric vehicles come on, and that's the sort of order of magnitude, that's the scale that electric vehicle electricity requirements would be. And I assume we charge those at the best time of day. So between that and the load rescheduling, we've basically created a load profile that's a close match to the solar and wind. And then you can see there's also a little bit of charging at the bottom of that. You see the red is charging batteries, which then get used in the morning and evening, and the light blue is pumping water uphill behind a dam, which you then release at night to produce electricity.
So the right side, the consumption side, is sort of the planned consumption if you were to match the production.
Yeah, so this is if the only assumption here is that we could potentially reduce loads by 30% at any time of day and move that to the better time of day. And that's a wild guess. It's kind of in the right ballpark, but we need to do a lot more work to figure out whether that's true. And that, if you can do that, it basically acts like a free battery because you're reducing consumption of power at one time and increasing it another time, and that's exactly what batteries do as well.
So you're also requiring people to change their behaviors as well.
Potentially, or their equipment. So yeah, people would probably keep an eye on the bill. If you show that graph again, there's a little dotted line on the left side, which you can sort of see. It says marginal cost, and that's what it's actually costing. I haven't shown how many dollars it is, but that's on the order of 20 cents a kilowatt hour. That's what it's costing the utility to produce power during each of those hours. And you can see it's lower during the day when we have all the sun and higher during that evening peak and the morning peak. And so if you have a smart water heater that can go and look up the prices and say, okay, I'm going to reheat when it's cheap and not when it's expensive, then that sort of achieves this load shifting that we want. And similarly, for those electric vehicles, the owners are going to say, I'm going to plug in at work, and it's going to go get the prices and charge when it's cheap. So that's the idea of how these incentives might work.
So this is the aspirational view of how it will satisfy the mandate.
Yeah,
So
so
this is 100% renewable, so that all the charts and graphs and numbers and relationships are all for the proposition. They demonstrate 100% renewables.
Yeah, I mean,
There's no
there's
fossil fuel out
that's
there.
all that's in there on that day. And that's what this graph is for one particular day. It's talking about how do we balance and there is a big challenge, sort of day to night energy balance. How do we get enough at night and not throw away the extra that we produce during the day?
Yeah.
And that you can do to a large extent with load shifting, and especially as electric vehicles come, getting them to charge during the day saves you from having to buy another battery to charge during the day and then charge them at night. So that's one thing. There's another challenge, which is the seasonal balance of energy, and that's actually a lot harder to deal with.
Right, and you talked about measuring the weather in your modeling.
Yeah.
So you're making predictions about the weather
Yeah,
by season, I guess, and that has an effect on those two charts.
Yeah, so this comes out of an optimization model. I basically give it descriptions of hundreds or thousands of different renewable energy projects that it could build, fossil power plants, biofuel power plants. Now it just recently added hydrogen, which makes a big difference. Batteries.
good difference.
So it's got a long list of things that it can build, and it has profiles of the weather on dozens of different days that are based on actual weather that we've had in the past. So then you know how the wind farm would perform or the solar facility. You know what the loads would be like. Those are on the same days. So if we have days that are hot and muggy, but with low solar production, then that shows up in the data. So it's designed to handle the real kind of weather we've seen.
Matthias, is this one of those fabulous computer programs where if I say, for example, there's going to be an El Nino in a given year, or I say that climate change is going to get worse, and different weather, all you got to do is put a slider up or down, and all of a sudden it all changes, and the relationships between these various resources change, and you can figure out how the 100% pattern will change because of a change in one of the variables?
Yeah, I mean, the whole process is pretty much automated. You feed in everything you know and everything that we could possibly do. You sort of turn a crank and you get a
That's
plan.
great.
So
Suppose in the year 2017, it's a new kind of battery, really cheap battery. And we put that battery online now. And we change all the relationships because that battery, it doesn't cost as much. And because of that, we can have more batteries. And we can take more of that daytime power and put it at night or whatever, put it at peak hours.
Yeah.
So you're able to change a slider on this program to take into account the new economics of battery technology, change everything.
Yeah, and you can sort of do that already too. You can say, because you kind of have to forecast the path of the cost of equipment and of fossil fuels. So you can either say, well, they're going to be kind of like they are today, or you can say, we think solar and batteries are going to get cheaper.
Assumptions change.
And that can change. So I can say, if these are your assumptions, this is the best plan for you to follow. I can't say whether your assumptions are right or wrong, but that's that might be something we need to come
For
to
planning
consensus
purposes,
on.
we may not agree on exactly what's going to happen with battery technology or the weather, or for that matter, geothermal. All of a sudden, there could be a political shift in the way people treat geothermal or undersea cable. All this would change. Isn't this what you want for Christmas?
Yeah. All I
She
want
wants to
for
have it on
Christmas.
her computer. A little app, I think, would
A
be
little
fine.
app, right.
Ray, what do you think?
I think in the few minutes we've got left, I'd like to ask, and I pulled your bio, and it took me a while to get it to come out of the computer and get printed because it's so long. You've done a lot of things, not just being a PhD, but you spent 4 or 5 years at Oxford as a research fellow, and you've studied climate change and its relation to what we do with energy. So my question to you is, and this is not a fair question, but if you were suddenly the king of the utility here in Hawaii,
Yeah.
or let's say just on Oahu, what would you do? How would you go about achieving what you think is possible and what I also believe is possible? How would you go about it? What would you do to make it happen by 2030? 100% clean energy by 2030.
That's a great question. I think I would start looking for sources of money to do it, for one thing. But I'd also start sending signals to the company that this is the direction we're headed in. I would commission work like what I've done that sort of says, okay, here's how it's going to fit together, and I'd find the pieces that are important. So one would be getting this adaptive demand or demand response in place. So that means getting smart meters out to people's houses, giving them at least the option of signing up for a dynamic pricing program, and then just line up a big queue of projects. I'd say we're going to build, the scenario I just showed you had 2.5 gigawatts of solar. So start building solar, basically. Work with the Public Utilities Commission to get them on board. It would be basically what they did with their integrated resource plan, where it's a stakeholder process. You get everyone involved, get them to agree that this is a good plan, except it would be a smarter plan that's not fossil dependent, that says, okay, here's how we're going to go to 100% renewable energy. And it means looking a lot more closely at how all these resources will interact, that's what I've been doing. But so it'd be basically come up with a strategic plan, get the consumer advocates happy with it, get the environmental people happy with it, get the industries happy with it, and go to the Public Utility Commission and say, we're going to do this, will you approve it, and start moving forward with it.
But it strikes me from this whole discussion that your work on this program is useful, if not essential, for developing that plan. You have to see what your assumptions are. You have to tinker with them. You have to watch and see what's changing around you.
Mm-hmm.
Tinker with that. At the end of the day, you can validate, looking forward, you can validate how the plan would work. You make a plan and test it against those relationships in the program, and then you see how it would work. And only then will you have a good handle on whether to take that plan or change it to some other kind of plan. I mean, this is the way we test the plan. So my question is, it sounds like a great idea. A, is it finished, or are you still working? Will it ever be quite finished?
Oh, it'll probably never be finished. It's about 80 or 85% of the way to where I'm ready to start putting out reports and papers on it. So
Okay.
we have to do the link between the islands, and that's going to be, I mean, we already know it's possible for Oahu on its own, but there are potentially big savings if we can integrate with other islands if they want to integrate.
Yeah.
So geothermal and wind on Maui and
So
the Big
good,
Island
you
possibly.
can address all these big issues and come up with actual results, or at least hypothetical. This really, so, can I put it on my cell phone?
The program?
Yeah.
You can put the graphs on your cell phone. The program,
It'll
well,
be smoking.
You have to,
Yeah.
you have to create an app there.
I mean, each little scenario takes about an hour to run on a
Oh.
pretty fast desktop computer. You put in more or less detail, so I'd love to have hundreds of days of data in this optimization phase, but then I would be waiting for a few months for the model to run.
But there are organizations in our world, in our energy world here in Hawaii, who would have a huge benefit out of this kind of dynamic modeling. For example, the PUC and the legislature. We've talked about that before.
Yeah.
And the governor, he could benefit by this, and so on and so forth. And so the question I put to you is, do they have access? Would you give them access? Are you offering access here? Speak to camera one.
Yeah, I mean, it is in fact already available. It's open source software. So after I wrote the first version of it as part of my PhD research, and then I published it as open source software. So it's on GitHub. If you look for Switch model, the model's called Switch. You can download the software. Our databases, just for security reasons, they're not totally accessible, but I'm happy to give people access to those. So there's no sort of hidden assumptions or hidden data. Anyone that wants is welcome to run it and test it out.
Yeah, this is, this whole discussion is more than it seems to be. There's something really powerful in this, and it's the way we need to look at it. It's not just academic, it's the way we need to look at it in order to make any kind of modeling going forward. And when they throw 2045 on the wall, or they throw 2030 on the wall, you have to validate that, and that's what you're doing. It's a real contribution.
Oh,
Thank you,
thanks.
Matthias. So let's close, Ray. This is your turn.
Well, I think we need to have the doctor back. So he can, I mean, there's so many things that he hasn't talked about that he's very knowledgeable about, especially the climate change, and especially with what's going on in Europe now with the conference.
COP21.
I'd really like to hear more about how you feel of the importance of what they're doing and what you think is likely to come out of it. But we're going to have to pass on that today, but we'll bring you back for another.
But you'd be
Sure.
willing to come back, right?
Yeah, sure.
You're speaking to my watch, please.
Yeah, of course. Been a good time. You haven't been too hard on me today.
Matthias Fripp, Assistant Professor of Electrical Engineering at the College of Engineering, UH Manoa, here on Hawaii, the state of clean energy, talking about 100% energy even before you look. Thank you.
Thank you. Aloha.
Aloha.
Uh-huh.